In the year of 1857, a horrible event took place in the history of America. This was, of course, the Mountain Meadow Massacre. The Mountain Meadow Massacre was a series of attacks on new settlers arriving in the territory of Utah. The mass murder of 120 settlers of the Baker-Fancher wagon train was perpetrated by the Mormons, or LDS, and oddly enough by the Red Indian Paiutes. The real question is, why did this massacre happen? First off, let's talk about the Mormons. The Mormons established their own settlement in Utah Territory due to persecutions in the east. Brigham Young was the leader of the Mormons. There was a lot of tension in Utah with the Mormons and the US government. The Mormons had fought in numerous Mormon wars, which forced them into Utah. In Utah, President James Buchanan, alarmed by exaggerated reports of unrest in the territory, appointed a new governor to replace the current Mormon leader, Brigham Young. Additionally, there were widespread rumors that President Buchanan had dispatched a significant number of US troops to Utah to quell what he perceived as a Mormon rebellion. These actions fueled widespread suspicion of outsiders and non-Mormons, as the Mormon community feared potential destruction by the federal government. In response, Brigham Young declared martial law on August the 5th, which included restrictions on travel through the territory without authorization. Moreover, Utah residents were advised against selling food to immigrants, particularly for livestock. Amid this tense atmosphere, the wary travelers reached Salt Lake City around August the 10th, 1857. At this crucial juncture, the wagon train members sought to repair their equipment, restock supplies, and replenish their provisions. Despite their hopes of resupplying in Salt Lake City, the immigrants of the Baker-Fancher wagon train faced growing hostility. Tensions ran high as they attempted to trade for food and supplies, but local Mormon settlers, adhering to Brigham Young's martial law orders, refused to assist them. The immigrants, frustrated and desperate, had no choice but to press onward. By early September 1857, the wagon train reached southern Utah and camped in Mountain Meadows, a grass valley along the old Spanish Trail. Unbeknownst to them, local Mormon militia leaders, fueled by fear and distrust, had already begun planning an attack. Rumors had spread that some immigrants had insulted Mormon leaders, poisoned water sources, and even threatened to bring federal troops to Utah. Though many of these claims were likely exaggerated or false, they inflamed tensions. The Baker-Fancher party left Corn Creek and continued the 125 miles to Mountain Meadows, passing Parowan and Cedar City. As the immigrants approached, several meetings were held in Cedar City by local Mormon leaders, pondering how to implement Young's declaration of martial law. At dawn on September 7, 1857, the travelers found themselves under attack by Paiute allies of the Mormons and militiamen disguised as Native Americans. Despite arranging their wagons in a circle for defense, 7 individuals were killed and 16 wounded in the initial onslaught. The siege persisted for the following 5 days as the wagon train fought back, desperate to hold their position. Supplies dwindled and hope faded as the attackers maintained relentless pressure. On the morning of Friday, September 11, 1857, John D. Lee approached the wagon train's campsite under a flag of truce. Exhausted and desperate, the immigrants agreed, believing their suffering had finally come to an end. The immigrants were led out of their fortification, with the adult men being separated from the women and children. The men were paired with a militia escort, and when the signal was given, the militiamen turned and shot the male members of the Baker-Fancher party standing by their side. The women and children were then ambushed and killed by more militia that were hiding in nearby bushes. Members of the militia were sworn to secrecy. A plan was set to blame the massacre on the Native Americans. However, the militia did not kill small children who were deemed too young to relate to what had happened. Nancy Huff, one of the 17 survivors and just over 4 years old at the time of the massacre, recalled in an 1875 statement that an 18th survivor was killed directly in front of the other children. The survivors were taken in by local Mormon families. 17 of the children were later reclaimed by the US Army and returned to relatives in Arkansas. In the aftermath of the Mountain Meadows massacre, the surviving children, 17 in total, were taken into the care of local Mormon families. For nearly 2 years, they lived among their captors, their true identities hidden. Then, in 1859, under the command of Captain James Lynch of the U.S. Army, the children were rescued and escorted back to their families in Arkansas. The first and only person to face punishment was John D. Lee, a major in the 4th Battalion of the Mormon militia in Harmony. Though many were involved, Lee was expelled from the Mormon church and became the scapegoat for the entire incident. After 2 trials, he was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to death. John D. Lee was executed by the firing squad at the very site of the massacre. In 1999, a new memorial honoring the pioneers was established in Mountain Meadows, Utah. The site is currently maintained by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as a place of remembrance. The Mountain Meadows massacre remains unmatched among the atrocities in American history, a tragic reminder of the fear, violence, and misunderstandings that defined this dark chapter in the West.